Okay, we are live, but we got to let it breathe just for a minute. And it's actually going to be a little bit longer than I would normally prefer. I apologize because lost in the conversation I'm having with the boys here right before we went live, I forgot to set up Instagram. And I just don't want to disappoint those people. So if you can just hang tight with me for just a couple more seconds, we're going to have this bad boy fully flowing. And there we go. Drop the stream key. Sorry about that, guys. Oh, that's the wrong thing. Okay, hold on. Stream key. There it is. Okay. How's that for you, Instagram? Thank you. Okay. We got Facebook on. We got Instagram. And we are good to go. So, welcome in, everybody. It's the Mile High Huddle podcast. I'm your host, Chad Jensen. And with me, my fellow football priest who you know, who you love, Zack Kelberman. Zack, we are on Christmas Eve. That's not a thing, Christmas Eve, but we're pretty close, dude. What do you want Santa Claus to bring you for Christmas?
It's going to sound cliche and kind of contrite, but I want a Broncos playoff win or, a playoff berth Saturday. I want the Broncos to beat the Bengals in what could be an ugly weather type scenario, which we'll get into today. How about you, Chad?
Pretty much the same thing. I've had a very good year. Got a great family, great wife, great job, and great partners and friends within that job. Great community. The only thing I'm missing to complete the whole beautiful picture is Broncos finally and officially getting off the schneid. Because you can say, even if they lose Zach, their last two, knock on wood, biting my tongue as I say it, a winning season. They at least posted their first plus 500 season since 2016. I mean, it's a step in the right direction, right? Don't get me wrong, but nah. Playoffs or bust, baby. So that's all Chad wants for Christmas. I just used my third person thing. But yeah, let's go, Broncos. And it's not going to be easy, Zach. You've got a red hot Joe Burrow. That Bengals offense, dude, Sports Illustrated broke it down today. It's made NFL history real quick, and then I'm going to serve this back to you. So Joe Burrow, I'm going to read this. This is from Tom Dierberger over at the mothership. While steering the Bengals to their third straight win, Burrow threw for 252 yards and 3 touchdowns. That performance was just enough to keep his streak alive and make some NFL history along the way. Burrow is the first quarterback in NFL history to throw for at least 250 yards and 3 touchdowns in 7 straight games. Whew. And that streak, Zach, it's still rolling.
There's a reason why many before this season, including myself, considered him the second best quarterback in the league behind Patrick Mahomes. If it wasn't for his defense, Chad, the Bengals might be the 2 seed in the AFC right now. They definitely be in the playoff picture. He is playing outstanding MVP level football, and he has some supporting cast around him to help out.
No doubt. Sorry, guys, for being a little bit later than we usually are tonight. Holiday season funk. We'll charge it to that, David Young could jumping in early with a super chat, almost an hour, we'll say 40 minutes before we went live. Thank you, bro. Says, just play Bronco football like we started the season. Play man, not zone. We suck at zone. We do suck at zone because it runs counter to the base philosophy of Vance Joseph. And getting Riley Moss back, knock on wood once again, is going to help in that regard a lot. But, Zach, the other thing here is an MHH, from you and I to Eric Trickle and many others, we've been very hard on Sean Payton, but this is when he needs to really man up and make sure he stays committed to that run game, calls a creative game plan that emphasizes the run, Zach, even if that means some pre-planned or some planned Bo Nix runs, not just scrambles, anything to move those chains, sustain drives while killing clock. You got to do that against a team like the Bengals because you got to keep that red-hot weapon of a quarterback on the sideline. Papa Bear, love you, bro. Merry Christmas, right back at you. He says, Merry Christmas, Broncos country, 10-7 plus. Let's go, Bo. MHH for life. Buckham ×3. Denver Broncos for life. MHH for life. Thank you, David.
Yeah, thank you, David. Yeah, you're right about keeping the offense at bay. Even if the weather's bad, which it looks like it will be, even if the Broncos defense rebounds, the Bengals are going to get theirs. They're too good. So it's on the offense. The onus to me, Chad, is on Bo Nix to have a consistent 4-quarter game and put up enough points where even if your defense has another sputtering effort, that you can overcome it.
Well, and the good news is it's looking like it's going to be real crappy, rainy type of like cold winter rain type stuff. Could morph into snow. It's going to be windy. That plays into the Broncos' hands because going into week 17, the defense ranks 5th against the run, whereas the Bengals defense against the run is like 21st. So ding, 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 ding. Sean Payton, there's a telegraph for you. Sam Bam with a very generous super chat. Thank you, brother. He says, hi, guys. Hoping the Broncos at least go at least 1-1 in the last 2 to get to double-digit wins and not be on a 3-game losing streak going into the playoffs. Well, right. If they don't win one more, there's a good chance they'll lose that 7th seed. So, we don't want them backing into the playoffs. I agree with you. Because by backing in, Zach, well, first of all, by losing your last 3, you're not guaranteed a spot. Cincy, if they beat you, if you lose your last 3, that means you lost to Cincy and you lost to the Chiefs, which is not only going to kill your conference and divisional numbers, could hurt you in the final arithmetic, Zach, but that's like basically a 2-game bump for Cincy because they not only move up a win, you drop a loss, and they win the head-to-head versus you. So, you can't even start getting into the arithmetic. You just have to go out there, control the controllables, and that starts with beating the Bengals on the road. That offense is legit, Zach, but they have been this season a woefully underperforming wounded duck in the other phases of their team.
Yeah, you're right. You don't want to go in if they even get in, if they lose all their games, if they back in, you don't want that negative momentum. Or do you if you're the Broncos? We talked about it yesterday. A team that usually plays better when they're counted out as the underdog, disrespected. When they start feeling themselves and they ride a winning streak, then that the play kind of tapers off. But if they beat Cincinnati and clutch a playoff berth and somehow lose to the Chiefs backups next week, they still make it, but they would have enough, I think, correctables on their plate, enough chip on their shoulder to go into the playoffs without feeling themselves too much.
So here's the good news. And it could be possible that the arithmetic, if they did lose the last 2, somehow, some way it ends up falling in their favor. And like the Broncos, they back into the playoffs. The 2011 Broncos, I meant to say. That's a possibility. To me, it's probably very unlikely. And it's certainly not something that you want to rely on. But Zach, the one thing that comforts me is you can't quite say that the Sean Payton Broncos have never lost 3 in a row. They have. And it was to open the Sean Payton era. His first 3 games as head coach last year, he lost to the Raiders, Washington, Dolphins. And then they started picking it up a little bit. This year, Zach, the longest losing streak has been 2 games. And if that's how this season finishes out, then that's fine. You can afford to lose 1 more game. You could even afford to lose this one, Zach. So if you only have a 2-game losing streak, that would mean you beat the Chiefs, you're in. Either way, you got to get that win.
I want the Broncos to take care of it on Saturday, but I am intrigued if they do lose. Setting up for week 18, you come home. I mean, Empower Field would be raucous, Chad, taking on the rival Kansas City Chiefs with a playoff berth on the line. In that scenario, I would like to see it, but I don't want to chance it. Like you said, take care of business Saturday and don't worry about it anymore.
The Ronk checking in. What's good, big dog? So great to see you on Facebook. He says, good evening, Chad and Zach on the Mile High Huddle podcast. Go Bo Broncos. Yes, indeed, brother. Go Bo Broncos. Right back at you. And guys, we got to there's a lot more we're going to be getting to, obviously. But first, a lot more trust. Also, we're going to take a look, scratch and sniff style. I'm going to bring up the AFC playoff picture. We're going to look at it. But first, guys, we got to remind you that even though the Broncos are probably going to be going into this Week 17 matchup as underdogs, you can make the most of underdog status as well by going with Underdog Fantasy. It's the place to play if you're a sports fan looking to win money while watching sports. Join over 5 million fans who are already playing on Underdog. With their pick'em game, you could win money by making entries with your favorite players. You compete against other players simply by selecting higher or lower on 2 or more players' stats. You could win up to 1,000 times your money. Turn every touchdown into a victory with Underdog.
And with their champs game, you can win up to 1,000 times your money just by choosing higher or lower on player stats like passing yards, interceptions, touchdowns, and much more. Like, for example, will Bo Nix have higher or lower than 237.5 passing yards next week? Will Nix have higher or lower than 1.5 passing touchdowns? Every dog deserves a second chance, and with Underdog Rescues, you can get your money back and receive a promo if an early injury causes your entry to lose.
That's right. So download the Underdog app today. Use code MHuddle to get up to $1,000 in bonus cash instantly. Again, that's an app. Download it. Underdog Fantasy. Use our code MHuddle to get up to $1,000 in bonus cash instantly. Every player, every touchdown. Just select higher or lower on Underdog.
Must be 18 plus, 19 plus in Alabama and Nebraska, 19 plus in Colorado for some games, 21 plus in Massachusetts and Arizona, and present in a state where Underdog Fantasy operates. Terms apply. Void in Colorado. Concern with your play? Call 1-800-GAMBLER or visit ncpgambling.org. Arizona, call 1-800-NEXT-STEP or text NEXT STEP to 53342. New York, call the 24/7 Hope line at 1-877-8-HOPE-NY or text HOPE-NY.
Okay, let's take a look at this playoff picture here because, I mean, this isn't so much, Zach, to get into the scenarios, but this is slightly comforting if you actually want the Chiefs to win in Week 17, and let me tell you why. In so doing, the lowest record they could get would be 14-2. Have they already 100% clinched the 1 seed? I want to make sure I'm not talking out of turn.
I don't think so.
I don't think so either. So you actually kind of want them to win. It sounds weak, but you do. You want them to win this next weekend so that they can get to 15-1. Then they can mail it in the finale, give you a little bit of a cushion. Whether the Broncos beat the Bengals or not, then they could, they get the Chiefs backup squad, basically. Bo Nix can go in there, deliver 11 wins as a rookie in year one. So I am going to be low-key rooting for Chiefs Week 17, but the Bills, they're 12-3. They're the second seed. The Steelers, 10-5, the 3 seed. Texans, 9-6 is the 4 seed. So those are your 4 division leaders at this stage. Ravens are at the 5. Chargers, as you see here, leapfrog the Broncos. They switch spots to 6. The Broncos are at 7. And as hopefully you can see this coming through, but the playoff probability, the way the NFL sees it, this is NFL.com, 76%, Zach, odds, probability anyway, that the Broncos make the playoffs. And that's not necessarily, Zach, because NFL.com believes the Broncos have a 76% chance of beating the Bengals, for example, or beating the Chiefs. It's those probabilities or that outlook combined with all this stuff down here. Because the next closest team, the Colts, are 7-8. Broncos own that tiebreaker. Then you got the Dolphins. Then you got the Bengals also at 7-8. So if the Bengals, this will update a little bit later in the week to show playoff probabilities. We see that currently, Zach, the Broncos or the Bengals, are at 7%. But over here in a couple of days, it'll show if they win, what would that increase, or would it increase their playoff probability? And then a loss, how it would hurt their probability. So anyway, there's a quick look at the playoff picture.
Yeah, as of right now, the Broncos would be traveling to Buffalo to take on the Bills in the wild card round. I think that's worst case scenario for Denver, considering the buzzsaw that the Bills are, even if they looked a little shaky against the Patriots yesterday. I prefer, I know it's not going to happen, to have the Texans in round 1, but I don't really care, Chad. I'm not going to be a hypocrite. If the Broncos get in, I'll be happy to face whoever is on the docket.
And this is kind of wild, really good sign for the NFL that as it stands, it's looking like you're going to have, let's see, 1, 2, 3 rookie quarterbacks leading their teams to the playoffs this year. That's kind of cool, if you ask me. Even though it's kind of hard to say that you could, Michael Penix Jr., you could include him, but still, at least the probability it's slightly in Falcons' favor. They're going to make the playoffs, and he'll be the guy at the controls. Phil, love you, big dog. Says, good evening, Chad, Zach, and Deacon Scott. This better be a game that we stick with the run. If the forecast holds true, it will be a running game. MHH for life, Broncos for life, go Broncos. Exactly. We can get into that. And as a little bit of a teaser, Luke's got an article breaking this down here shortly. But let's see here. It's scheduled for a 2:30 Mountain Time kick on Saturday, 4:30 Eastern. Nine News meteorologist Chris Bianchi is expecting the weather to affect this high-stakes game. Heads up, this is what he tweeted. Heads up, Broncos country. Saturday game in Cincy looks pretty soggy. Heavy rain possible, though some modeling keeps the heavy rain post-game Saturday night. In other words, there's a chance that heavy rain comes after. But 15 to 25 mile per hour gusts of wind possible. It's going to be a factor. And, of course, we're going to monitor the weather updates as it inches closer. But, Zach, I got to tell you, even though the Broncos have been mostly impotent as a rushing offense, I think if this does turn into a ground and pound type of physical game, it does favor the Broncos a bit more because they have the superior O-line. I mean, it's hard to make an argument there's a better O-line overall. They're up there anyways in the tops. Not only that, Zach, but you've got a defense that ranks top 5 against the run. Meanwhile, if you want to, we'll talk more about this Thursday night, but the Bengals rushing offense, 29th, Zach. Their rushing defense, 21st.
Really surprised with their offensive ranking. Chase Brown is a hell of a running back, even if a lot of casual fans don't know about him. And, weather's the great equalizer. This could limit the Bengals passing attack and make it more, fairer playing field for the Broncos. It's Audric Estime time to me, Chad. This is, he's the bruiser. He looked good last week. Sean Payton said he's encouraged. Sean Payton said he's only going to get better from here on out. So you have to commit to the ground game. You have to get it going. But you're going to have to rely on Bo Nix too a little bit. He's going to have to make some passes. And Lord knows how he looked in the last rain game against the Jets. It wasn't pretty. He was sailing passes left and right. I just pray he puts a glove on this time.
Yeah, something. The one thing that gives me some comfort is it seems like, and I bet even Bo Nix, Eric, thank you, bro. The stars on Facebook, Eric Flynn checking in, old reliable. But I bet what I'm about to say, if you were to ask even Bo Nix, he would go, yeah, that's how it feels. But it's like that was so long ago. It seems like so much has transpired that it's almost like it was another lifetime for Bo Nix. Playing week 4, New York Jets. Broncos are 1-2. Coming off their first win of the season, which was a relatively romping win over the Vita Vea-less Tampa Bay Buccaneers. And that was just like weird confluence of events that led to a stat line, Zach, was 60 yards passing.
Yeah.
I don't even remember the rest. But Bo Nix has developed in his confidence, the way he sees the field, his pocket poise. All those things have improved dramatically. But the biggest thing that concerns me, Zach, is after throwing, as far as Bo Nix is concerned, is after throwing 5 picks combined in the preceding 2 games, he came out red hot against the Chargers, 3 consecutive touchdown drives, 2 of them were passing scores. And then he kind of went into a little bit of a shell in the second half, especially where everything was horizontal. No Bronco receiver could make a guy miss. They were getting swallowed up and tackled right away. And he was not pressing the sticks at all. And to use his own verbiage, he's like, hey, I got to flush those interceptions. This is in the immediate aftermath of each one of those 2 games. He said, I got to flush those interceptions because I can't let them linger at the risk of becoming gun shy, quote, gun shy. Would you say that Bo Nix, would you wager that he was perhaps a little bit gun shy against the Chargers?
I think he was doing what he was coached to do, and that's not turn the ball over, is be very conservative. And you mentioned the Broncos pressing in the second half and kind of falling apart. I think the whole team, we talked about the defense, but the play calling, the coaching. Sean Payton played not to lose, and we've said it a billion times. When you coach like that, more often than not, you end up losing the game. So that's what Bo Nix, I think, has been instructed to do. He took a deep shot to Marvin Mims. It should have been a completion or a DPI. It wasn't either of them. In this game, though, even if it rains, even if it's bad weather, Jamar Chase and T. Higgins are so good where they can turn a 5-yard pass into a 95-yard touchdown. You're going to have to lean on the quarterback a little bit to make some plays and push the ball down the field, if only to keep the defense out of the box and off of the running game.
Phil wants to know whether Jaleel McLaughlin is going to be back this week. Technically, Denver's number 2 running back, at least as far as the depth chart's concerned. Zach, what have we heard about it? Because Coach Payton doesn't like to talk about injuries. In fact, any insight he offered yesterday in the conference call about Riley Moss, it was a gift. You know, he didn't have to say anything, and normally he wouldn't, but then him closing his remark by saying, hopefully he'll be available this next weekend. He didn't bring up McLaughlin. What have you heard?
Yeah, he didn't talk about him. He wasn't available today. Hopefully tomorrow, when the Broncos start to practice for the game, we'll know more about McLaughlin. But he did get in, I'm pretty sure, a limited session last week, maybe toward the end. But he was always tracking to miss one game and then return for the Bengals game. Should be no problem there. But is this a game for McLaughlin, or is this a game for the bigger running backs? You know, Estime, I hate to say it, even Javonte Williams and Blake Watson.
Okay, I want to grab this real quick. Phil, here's what happened. Facebook did an algorithmic change about 1.5 years ago. And basically the way it shakes out is no longer are you seeing MHH in your feed, even though you follow it consistently, unless Facebook has evidence of you seeking out and engaging with MHH videos, shares, articles we've done, whatever, through the Facebook page. So what's happened is if it doesn't see those numbers, it kicks it back out of your feed. In order to get it back in your feed, and this includes notifications, you have to go to the Mile High Huddle Facebook page, okay? And you have to, I'll do a little thing on this next time. I'm not going to do it right now, but there's a little spot on the page where you click into it and you can click to make it a favorite. You have to make it a favorite. Again, you have to do that every so often to make sure you're getting the notifications. According to what they tell us, what they've told MHH is, and that goes for all of you, anyone who is within the sound of my voice that uses Facebook, enjoys the articles that we're sharing daily, make sure you go to the MHH page, click the little menu, and make it a favorite. Then you'll always see it in your newsfeed. You won't miss anything. So that's a Cliff Notes version. I'll try, Phil, to give you a better explanation and maybe a little scratch and sniff on how exactly to do that maybe next time. But very frustrating for publishers like us because, you know, Zach and I, Scott, we've invested a lot of time, money as well to grow our Facebook audience and community and following. And then you would think, oh, no, those, not to say you guys belong to us, but that the following should belong to the page, to the channel. No. They tweak their algorithm whenever they want. They can de-emphasize news, which is what they did 1.5 years ago, and making it, Zach, way harder on us to make a buck.
Yeah. Good old Zuckerberg at it again. They're emphasizing more of the TikTok, Instagram, Reels type of content, and that's not really us. So do what Chad said, Phil.
Go to the Facebook page, make it a favorite. There's a little menu. Taylor, thanks, pal, with the super chat 2 nights in a row saying, keep up the good work, fellas. You rock. You rock, bro. Thank you. Zach, you know, I'm seeing, obviously, we've talked a little bit about it tonight. I'm seeing some comments, obviously, in the chat here about the running game. The Broncos really need to, this needs to stop being a weekly lament of Sean Payton. You know, I just lost focus on it, and we had some opportunities. It didn't work out. That's one excuse after another. Get that run game going. What did he say about Audric Estime? You had the article for us today that maybe, does it hopefully portend well for the run game's outlook from here on out?
He complimented him up and down. He said he ran with power. He was really encouraged by what he saw against the Chargers. He says he'll only get better from here on out. Him and Blake Watson he brought up, and he said we'll have to see how we can divvy up that timeshare going forward. But that last comment there holds the most water to me because it has been a timeshare. It has been the most by committee backfield in the NFL that we can't guess it. And we cover the team every day for a living, and we have no bead on who's going to end up starting in any given Sunday. I would hope they can get the run game going. I can hope they can commit to one person, but the more games that go by, I'm starting to think they just don't have the horses. They don't have that elite player in the backfield in order to do what we all want them to do.
I like that phrase because I actually used it today when writing about the offensive tackles, how both Garrett Bowles and Mike McGlinchey, believe it or not, are both individually ranked in the top 5 for lowest QB pressure rate. So they're pass blocking their asses off, Zach.
Yeah.
And with that interior of Ben Powers, Wattenberg, and Quinn Miners, look, dude, they can impose their will. They have a nice physical tone-setting starting 5. I would put them up against almost any offensive line in the NFL. And yet the run game sucks. To me, it's not even so much a lack of ball carrying, running back stable talent, Zach, although that is a limitation. I honestly believe it's more of a philosophical commitment thing on the part of the head coach. For example, today, real quick, this all ties in, so trust. But yesterday, I went down a rabbit hole on John Gruden because he joined Barstool Sports and he has this new content he's been putting out, and it's actually really freaking good. So because I was watching some Gruden content yesterday, today while I'm working and stuff, I pull up YouTube. The algorithm shows me remember Gruden's QB camp, Zach, for the
Oh, yeah.
prospects coming out.
Good stuff.
Well, there was a version of that he called like the Gruden's championship camp or something. Anyway, it was right after the Saints won their Super Bowl. Okay, so early 2010, they literally are the defending world champs, and he brings in Sean Payton. Gruden does, who is one of his proteges, by the way. We always talk about how he's a Parcells, Payton's a Parcells guy, but he was a Gruden guy first, all right, for what it's worth. But anyway, he does Gruden, Payton, and Drew Brees. And I don't know, maybe 5 minutes into the little deal they're going through, they're looking at film and plays, and it's fun. It's a good watch. He makes a comment about how, I can't even remember the joke. It was more of a joke about how basically Sean Payton has to be in game as a play caller, has to be talked into calling a run play. Oh no, that he's never called a run play twice in a row in his life was the joke, right? Dude, that was 15 years ago, basically, and it still holds true. It is a thing for Sean Payton staying committed, Zach, to that run.
It's so important for a rookie quarterback's development, though, is to have that running game. Even Jaden Daniels has that in Washington. He has two solid running backs he can lean on. You're right. It's a Sean Payton thing because he always rotated them. He never really invested a high round pick at the position. But when you think about it, Chap, the lack of talent, who are they really relying on? An undrafted free agent, a mid-round pick, a guy who's coming off knee surgery, total reconstructive knee surgery, and another undrafted free agent in Blake Watson. I just pine for the Jahmyr Gibbs, the Bijan Robinsons, the Saquon Barkleys, the Derrick Henrys. I wonder how much better the offense would be with one of them back there and not the aforementioned.
I mean, for what it's worth, and I don't mean to rebut you, I'm only saying this because it gives me hope that it's possible. But literally, Sean Payton's first ever draft pick as a head coach was Reggie Bush in 2006, number 2 overall. And then whatever it was, 6-7 years later, I think it was 2011, he takes Mark Ingram in the first round. He's shown at times, Zach, granted intermittent, you're not trying to draft a running back in first round every year. He's shown that he's willing to do it for the right guy. So maybe there's that right guy, and it has been a different league. The league has evolved. Even fewer running backs go in the first round, although they still go. But I'm with you, dude. 2025, there needs to be just an upgrade across the board on the skill positions, and it'll help elevate and lift Bo Nix. But still, we're not there yet. We're still in the trenches, 2024. He's got to show more of a commitment and a willingness and a creative impetus for that run game. And to quote a few people in the chat, including, where'd he go? I just had him up here. Mario, okay? Call some plays with Bo Nix as the runner. Let him use those legs, Zach.
Every time the Broncos have used Bo Nix and he's been the leading rusher, they lost, I think, except for a couple games ago. I don't think he was leading rusher, though, but that's not the recipe for success. I think you can use it as a supplemental income for your offense, so to speak, but you still need that game changer. And you know what, Chad? I hope you're right. I hope he does invest another first-round pick in that position because I don't know in today's NFL that you can get what you want to get out of an offense without having a blue chipper back there.
I mean, ask John Gruden, one of his mentors. John Gruden liked having that blue chip running back, dude. And even at his last stop that ended in most infamously with the Raiders, he had Josh Jacobs, right? So, like, that's a guy who believes in having a workhorse and a guy who can do a lot for you at running back. And Sean Payton, he loved him some Josh Jacobs, but didn't have the cap space this year, Zach, to go after him. Eric Flynn, the Broncos have the 3rd lowest pressures allowed this season. Yeah, look, this is in the article I wrote as well. It's a great synergy thing going on in terms of the pass protection because, Zach, not only do you have an offensive line that's blocking well and tackles especially on the edges, but you have, to quote Sean Payton, a quarterback rookie though he may be, in Bo Nix that is quote unquote a tough sack. That comes from his preparation, his pre-snap, execution and reads, his post-snap stuff, his pocket presence and poise. It's all part of the milieu. And then lastly, the third thing, Zach, which is the schematic philosophy. Those things put together, it's hard to sack Bo Nix, and it's always going to be hard to sack Bo Nix. And everywhere he's been, he's a tough sack. And that's great. It's something you can hang your hat on. But at this stage, you got to put your head down a little bit. You got to be Riley Moss, who's always looking to stick his nose in the muss on defense. Like, he'll run down and stop that run. He'll solo tackle till the cows come home on the edge for you. Broncos need to reverse that and put that kind of mindset into asserting the ball on the ground on offense.
We've come a long way. We've talked about a lot of Broncos quarterbacks in the past, and we all said the same thing. How does he get a fair chance when he's always on his back or always pressured? I'm talking Drew Lock. I'm talking even Russell Wilson circa 2022.
Yeah.
Bo Nix does not have that excuse, Chad. He's gotten protected very nicely this season, and also his own escapability and pocket maneuverability has helped him there. You're right, though. All the highly paid linemen along the front five, and you can't create a couple yards. We saw it in the first half against the Chargers, and it just totally disappeared and reverted back to the mean. You want to see that come out again against the Bengals.
Only 2 teams have allowed fewer sacks than the Denver Broncos this year. Andriano X90, what's good, bro? Thank you for the super chat. He says, not going to lie, usually after every loss this season, I dust my negative feels away because this team was building grit. But now I've got a bad feeling we've maxed out. I think, and if you missed the show last night, Andriano, I think this is the ghost of the past, the traumas of seeing previous Broncos teams of the preceding 8 years squander opportunities and disappoint when the chips are down. And if we're to believe Sean Payton that this team is different, well, it's time for him, Zach, to go out and prove it. And I do think that it is. I mean, they've already got to 9 wins. That in itself, again, it's not enough for me because of how close the Broncos are to really doing something, but it is a victory in and of itself to basically double the odds makers over-under prediction for your win total. I mean, do you remember, Zach, when the over-under came out and he laughed and he's like, I've never had less than 7 wins in a season. They're predicting 5.5. That ain't going to happen. And he was right. So I'm going to trust him in that. And I think all of us who've watched this team grow together, a very young team, played a lot of rookies, a lot of inexperienced guys too, Zach, from P.J. Locke to Jaquan McMillan on defense. I mean, Wattenberg at center. There's a lot of inexperience. Even Marvin Mims getting as much time on offense second half of the season that he has. A lot of inexperience, and yet they're growing and they're learning, and they're that metal, METTLE, that is building the grit. It's coming collectively from a youth movement, and I do think it's going to be enough. This is going to be a tough game, dude. It's going to be a tough game because the Bengals, Zach, are desperate, and Joe Burrow's hard to beat when his back's against the wall. But I'm gonna trust that this defense, if it gets its Riley Moss back, is going to bounce back. And I'm going to trust that Bo Nix, he's got his dander up a little bit after coming so close to clinching last week, only to see it just vanish and collapse.
If I would have told you out there that the Broncos would be 9-6 on December 23rd, their next game, they can clinch a playoff berth with a victory, we would have all signed up for that before the season. This season is already a success, Chad. We're just measuring the different levels now and seeing how successful we can go.
That's true.
I take the opposite approach to the comment, though. I don't think we've seen the Broncos' best effort yet, especially against a playoff team or a winning team. We've seen them beat up on bad teams, maybe with the exception of the Buccaneers. I think the best is still yet to come with the Broncos. Maybe I'm just being too homeristic.
That's a good way to put it. The levels of success. We've already busted through one ceiling, basically, is what you're saying.
Yeah.
And I agree. But there are multiple floors in this building, and the Broncos can keep busting through them. I see here, Chad Fritz, what up? If Denver can play man, they should win. If they play zone, it's going to be a long day. That, Chad, all comes down to, did they get Riley Moss back? If they get Riley Moss back, it's business as usual. It's going back to the model. If not, I can't trust, Zach, that Vance Joseph will see the forest for the trees, because for whatever reason, losing Moss has made Vance Joseph feel like the Broncos' best chance at succeeding defensively is a predominant zone. Why? I'm not sure, because we showed you last night. We illustrated from my article, and we talked about it on the show, Zach. Without Riley Moss, the Broncos are relinquishing 109 yards more per game through the air. All right. I would rather say, okay, that was a colossal fail. Let's say Riley Moss can't go. He's just not quite there. Whatever. Okay. Go back to your core philosophy of playing pressure front and man coverage. All right. And let the chips fall with Damari Mathis and Chris Abrams-Drain playing man. Just let the chips fall. Quit trying to put too much on them between the ears to execute successfully zone. Obviously, as much, Zach, as we've glazed Jim Leonard, the new DB's coach, obviously he's been unable to get that unit up to speed from a communication and understanding, right, execution perspective on zone. So I would rather see, if he can't go, Moss, hey VJ, just dance with the one that brought you, so to speak, and that's your man coverage. Just let the chips fall.
I'd love to see Leonard as the Broncos DC replacing VJ, but that's a whole other conversation. You wonder, Moss should be back for this game, but the weather could complicate things now. If it's rainy and the turf is, untenable, you wonder if that knee is going to be thinking about that or playing differently, but they need him out there. You have to double Jamar Chase. You're going to have to put a safety over the top on T. Higgins. It's going to be tough, but if they play bump and run, throw the timing off between the receivers and Burrow, and most importantly, pressure Joe Burrow, something they did nothing of against Herbert, they at least have a chance in this game on defense.
Well said. Hey, how about this? This is kind of cool from the Ronk. I'm going to trust that this is the truth. I don't know it for a fact. I didn't know this, so thank you, Mike. Von Miller's trying to be the first NFL player to win 3 Super Bowls with 3 different teams. Broncos, Rams, those are the 2 he's got, and then possibly here with the Bills. Zach, the Bills are one of the quintessential NFL clubs, one of the quintessential close but no cigar clubs. Like, they are the kings of the missing rings, them and the Minnesota Vikings. Let's just take the Broncos out of it for a minute. Do you think this is their year where they can finally get past the Chiefs?
Sorry, couldn't hear you. That comment went wide right on me. I thought originally a few weeks ago it was going to be the Ravens and the Lions, but the Ravens kind of petered off and the Lions defense took a hit. It's all about Josh Allen. If he can overcome whatever's thrown at him, including injuries, then they have a really decent chance. But the bugaboo is and will be, until they take them down, Kansas City. The road to the Super Bowl goes through KC. They haven't been able to vanquish them in the past. Could this be the year? Could be. I hope for Vaughn it is, that's for sure.
What was it 2 years ago, that AFC title game in KC, Buffalo, and they're down to the wire. They're just trading touchdowns back and forth. I think it went to overtime, if memory serves. And the Chiefs, man, they're just so savvy at coming out on top.
Yeah.
Coming out on top. This was kind of funny. One more little anecdote on my Gruden binge, right? I'm a binger and I'm a purger. When I find something that's interesting, I binge the you-know-what out of that. Then I get it out of my system. I purge, I move on. Some of the things I don't purge, and those are the things that stick with me for life. But if it interests me, I'm going down that rabbit hole with a big-ass flashlight, and I'm going to examine it. So there's this podcast on Barstool with Will Compton and Taylor
Luan,
thank you, called Bussin' with the Boys. And when they recently, you had Gruden appear on it now because he's part of the Barstool brand. And he told this little anecdote about how he was asked, hey, what coach was it when you go up against him head to head and you just knew you had to get that guy's, and he didn't even think about it, dude. He goes, Andy Reid. And then he goes back and he tells a story about how they're both assistants on Mike Holmgren's staff in Green Bay in the early and mid 90s, and how Andy Reid is quote unquote the teacher's pet because he played as an O lineman for Holmgren at BYU. And how they would have there's a reason for this, guys. It applies, but how, they'd have their offensive meetings with the game plan and the plays drawn up on the board. And then whatever new plays were being kind of pitched to Holmgren that would come from the different position group guys, like Reid was O-line, Gruden was, I think, QB's coach, whatever. They'd each were encouraged to write up a new play to suggest each week to put into the Holmgren game plan. And then Holmgren would come into the meeting, he'd look at the board, and the new plays would be in a new color. So he'd go right to them. And it would always be Andy Reid's play that would get picked, and it would always just chap Gruden's butt until finally one day Holmgren accepted one from Gruden and it ended up being his play, the longest rushing score in Brett Favre's history. And you guys go look this up. It's great on YouTube, the way he tells the story. I mean, you can just sit and listen to this dude talk for hours. But Andy Reid, dude, what I'm getting at here is he's got a lineage. And what he's learned all those years from as an assistant to the wealth of experience that he has as a head coach, Philly and KC, it comes out in the wash when the chips are down for the Chiefs. That will to win is unlike anything I've seen, Zach, besides the Brady Belichick dynasty.
I was going to say, I know the pitchforks are going to come out for me saying this, but you could make the case that Andy Reid is the best coach in NFL history. What he's done, his pedigree, the quarterback development. I mean, he's made Patrick Mahomes into a game manager, and they're still 14-1. It's pretty incredible. So, got to give Andy Reid his credit, and that's why the road will keep going through KC. Will Buffalo travel down that road and come out the other side? We'll find out.
I hate to even contemplate it, but his argument is made more solid, Zach, because he's already in the 2 back-to-back club. I want to say I think there's 7, 8 maybe coaches in NFL history who've won back-to-back world titles. Reid's now one of them. But if he were to win the Super Bowl this year, and I'll bite my tongue as I say it, he'd become the first to three-peat. There have been 3 out of 4s, but never 3 in a row. And man, how crappy would that be for us to sit back as spectators in horror, Zach, witnessing that particular history being made? We can't let it happen.
The only silver lining is that maybe Reid would be more inclined to retire Travis Kelce, retire Chris Jones, and whoever. The dynasty doesn't last forever, so that's what we have to cling to if that happens. But let's not hope that happens.
All right, guys, we're at the 2-minute warning. Any burning questions, supers, get them in the chat now, and we will get them before we dip. Jose, Carr out for the season? Well, let's see. Is he talking Zach Derek Carr?
It's not really news if it is. Yeah, Spencer Rattler's starting for them now.
Yeah, but for the season?
Yeah, he was on IR, I think.
Man, I've been spending too much time on this Christmas thing. You know, some of the talk about missing the forest for the trees. I'm a low key Derek Carr admirer, always have been. I thought, man, he missed his chance. Like Sean Payton, if he would have I'm glad he didn't. But Sean Payton, if he would have got a guy like Derek Carr, that would have been a devastating combo. But Zach, why don't we get to the call outs and then we'll wrap things up and we'll check one last time when you're done to see if there's anything else burning.
And I believe it's been almost 43 minutes. You guys make it go so fast. Another great episode of the Mile High Huddle podcast. If you're not doing so, please follow us on X at the MHH Pod. You can follow the main account on X at Mile High Huddle. Chad at Chad and Jensen, myself at Kelberman NFL, and Scott, our producer, at Scout Kennedy. If you guys want some merch like we're rocking each and every single podcast, check out mhhmerch.com and get you some. If you haven't done so yet, drop us a like at facebook.com/Mile High Huddle Pod. You can find us on Instagram at mile_high_huddle. If you're listening on Spotify or Apple Podcasts, make sure you're leaving your football priest a 5-star review for a chance to win some merch each and every single month. But if anything, y'all, please, very important that you subscribe, like, and share this video and every video you see on the MHH channel. It really helps us grow and reach more Broncos fans just like you.
Hey, I'm going to show you guys real quick. This is now, Phil, if you're still with us, anybody on Facebook, because we also have a lot of people who watch the show on YouTube, but consume and read the articles that are shared on Facebook. So I'm going to show you what you do to make sure you're seeing MHH in your Facebook feed, okay? You just go to the MHH page, Mile High Huddle, 113,000 followers, and you're going to see this little hamburger menu over here on the right. You click it, and you mark it a favorite, okay? Once you mark it a favorite, you're going to see it in your feed. You're going to get notifications, all that stuff. And with the way things are nowadays, as I mentioned, you might have to do that, you know, once every month or two, just to make sure it keeps flowing if you start not seeing it. But, you know, we get so caught up in our lives that we don't always notice when things just aren't in our feed. So we appreciate each and every one of you that take a proactive approach to making that happen, because it's foundational for our success, not just with the pods, but with the articles and everything else. So appreciate you guys. A mile high salute and a special shout out to the great Super Chat superstars and supporters helping us keep the lights on tonight, like David Yunkin, David McElrath, the Papa Bear, Sam Bam, The Ronk, Phil McLaughlin, Eric Flynn, Taylor Christensen, Andriano X90. Thank you guys. Much love and respect. And by the way, I appreciate those of you who have been going to the New Bridge the Gap music video and dropping a comment and a like. I've shouted out everyone who's done it so far, but now I got to shout out my parts. Zach, Scott, they went and did it for me last night for the band. Hey, thank you. It's a fun passion project. I do it for fun. I don't do it to try and make a buck. It's purely a passion project, but I have a lot of fun doing it as my kind of serious hobby. You know, Zach, some people hunt, you know, talking dudes, right? Some dudes are like hunters and fishermen, outdoorsmen. Others might have like, they play tennis, they're big into golf, whatever. Mine's music. So guys, go drop a link or pardon me, I'm dropping the link. Go drop a like and a comment on the new BTG music video in the throws, and I will shout you out on the show. And with that, guys, Merry Christmas. There is no show tomorrow. There won't be a Building the Broncos. Nick and Carl will be taking Christmas Eve off. Christmas Day is on a Wednesday. There will not be a Mile High Insiders show. But who knows? Who knows? Maybe you'll get surprised with a little something around 6 p.m. Mountain, 8 p.m. Eastern. You never know. Don't rule it out. And then Zach and I are back for sure, guaranteed. Lock it in Thursday night. We'll do the head-to-head. We'll see what kind of news has come out of the injury reports, Zach, the practices Tuesday, Wednesday, because it's a Saturday game, as Zach mentioned earlier. The Broncos football week starts tomorrow. So we're going to have some press tomorrow, some pressers, you know, we're going to have practice. So by Thursday, Zach, it's going to be more like a Friday, only you got Zach and myself. It's going to be fun. So have a great, in case you don't hear from us, Merry Christmas, Happy Holidays. Everybody stay safe, especially if you're traveling. Give our best to your families. We appreciate you.
Merry Christmas, everyone. Have a happy holiday. Stay safe out there. We'll see you Thursday to break down the Broncos Bengals. Take care. And as always, go Broncos.